the number one risk factor in health is isolation. Imagine if we could get people collaborating together, sharing knowledge. Now we do need to deal with the privacy thing, but that's a personal issue that each of us needs to come to grips with. And if you're parents, what are you going to make sure that your kids protect? Because 20% of teenagers sext. You know, they send pictures of themselves without their clothes on or partially naked. And if your 14-year-old daughter is doing that to her boyfriend or something, she has no idea where that's going to end up. So to me, we need to take personal responsibility for this issue. But it's something that we need to manage as we move to a new paradigm of healthcare or of whatever.
And you talk about sharing of information for the pharmaceutical industry, that's crucial. And I think about sharing of information in the technology industry. That's a little tough. And I guess I think about it in the context of something like Samsung and Apple. Yeah. You've got two companies that are going crazy with legal battle after legal battle, protecting their intellectual property. Yeah. And yet at the same time, they also work together, right? You've got Samsung supplying Apple. How do we find that right balance? Because you talk about these open environments. How do we find that right balance?
Well, it's a great question. Welcome to the age of networking. See, we have this view that your intellectual property belongs to you. I mean, we invested in it. You know, it's our innovation. We patent it, trademark it, license it. Someone tries to infringe it, we'll get out our lawyers. That's the way we think about intellectual property. And we have laws that enables Apple to sue Samsung for having little square boxes with round corners on the screen, because that's an intellectual property worth protecting. We have laws, to me, that discourage innovation in many of our OECD countries around intellectual property. See, because that old approach, well, it didn't work so well for the music industry. You know, they took a legal solution to a business model disruption, and the industry that brought you Elvis and the Beatles is now suing children and collapsing. And it's being replaced by a whole new music industry that has a better business model where musicians get paid, where music lovers get access to all the music they want, and where the industry itself is profitable. I'll just give you one example in technology. So IBM was confronted with this challenge of Linux. You know Linux? You know what I'm talking about? Linux is a computer operating system owned by nobody. But it's now the dominant operating system in the world for medium and large computers, and now, as of this year, dominates mobile devices. So when this first came out, some technology companies said, this is socialism. You shouldn't be putting intellectual property in commons. All this stuff ought to be owned simply by the private sector, full stop. Well, IBM, that was their initial reaction, and then they had an epiphany. No, if we embrace Linux, some good things can happen. So IBM gave away $400 million of its intellectual property to the Linux movement. Now, why would they do that? They saved themselves $1 billion a year developing their own proprietary operating system. They created a platform on which they built a multi-billion-dollar business. And they also got to stick it to Microsoft. I mean, probably not in that order of importance. But and now Microsoft, of course, is on board and embraces Linux as well. We compete on a higher level. So this is one of our views, is that you don't need to own everything. You have a portfolio of intellectual property, just like you might have a portfolio of stocks. You have,
what do you hear? Because you advise businesses, you advise governments. Yeah. When you put out these concepts, what do they say?
Well, leaders of old paradigms often have great difficulty in embracing the new. Again, I'm from Canada, so I'll give you a Canadian example of something good that's happening. So Canada, like the States, has these provinces. And one of the provinces is British Columbia. And they decided they're going to do a different model of government. And they did what Rob McEwen did in the gold industry. They did a challenge, only the topic was around climate change. And the idea is that governments, rather than doing everything themselves, can be a platform where they just give away data, raw data. And that enables the private sector, civil society organizations, other government agencies, and individual citizens to self-organize and create value. So, they held this thing called Apps for Climate Change. They gave away every bit of data that they had about carbon emissions and about climate that was within the BC government. It was all locked up in these computer systems. They just released it. And they challenged the software industry to create a bunch of apps. So 22 companies responded. The prize was like nothing. It was $25,000 given by a private sector company. The winner, I saw this, it was unbelievable. From your mobile device, you can walk around your office and look at how much carbon is being emitted. And you turn off the lights on one floor, and the carbon emissions goes down. This is real-time tracking of carbon for an enterprise. So
better than carbon credits?
well, there may be a role for that stuff too, but this costs the government virtually nothing. And it's a new way of thinking about, again, how we orchestrate capability to create public value. Governments don't need to do everything themselves now, because there's a new division of labor emerging in society about how we do this stuff.
You know, the media industry has on one hand, been really taken a big hit because of everything online. There's so much information. On the other hand, you have everybody who's got a camera out there taking videos for us and sending it back and doing our work. I mean, it's really changed the paradigm in terms of the news industry dramatically. Totally.
I mean, like the printing press and radio, then television, broadcasting. Even the early days of computing, the model was one to many, one size fits all. We control it. Everybody out there is a passive recipient. Now all of that's being turned on its head. Overall, for the better, I think. Now there are some issues. Take newspapers, okay? So I said 70 have gone bankrupt in the United States in the last decade. The problem that newspapers solve is not really a problem anymore. As one youngster said to us, if the news is important, it will find me. And Twitter, along with, again, a Canadian company called Hootsuite that organizes your Twitter feed, is my newspaper. I have my economics columnists, I'm going to have to get, now that I've met you, I'm going to get you and I don't know, you're an economics business person. I have my political people, I have people who are talking about me, because I want to know about that. I have my personal friends, I have sports people, and I've curated my own newspaper.
And it's fascinating when there's something news. I think of when Osama bin Laden was killed. We were all on Twitter, and the story just kept unfolding. We didn't have all the facts and the information, but everybody was on Twitter and just tweeting away, and you saw the story unfold.
That's amazing that you say that.
Powerful.
Because I was sitting in the airport in the lounge in Sao Paulo on that night, Sao Paulo, and my flight was delayed, so I was on Twitter. And I saw this little tweet come by from someone in Pakistan that someone I sort of was paying attention to, saying, oh, Osama bin Laden has been killed. Here's what happened. And I'm like, I can't be right. I mean, so I went to the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, there was nothing there. Then I saw another tweet and a couple more. And I thought, I'll go to Wikipedia. I went to Wikipedia about 10 minutes later, and there were 20 people editing Osama bin Laden's bio. Now, I mean, it's kind of a trivial example in the sense that it didn't really benefit me to know 20 minutes before everybody else knew that this was happening. But it's just the tip of the iceberg.
I mean, social media is so powerful, and it's part of the change.
Yeah, and it's affecting every industry. To me, again, it's not about hooking up online. It's a new means of production. It's changing the way you find gold. It's changing the way you create government services.
Any other questions? Please.
To your point about digital immigrants and digital natives, what advice would you give to a manager who's a digital immigrant managing a whole bunch of digital natives?
Well, it's a great question, and it's a big concern because you have the biggest generation ever. In the US, there's 80 million of them. This is the baby boom echo. If you have kids that are between the ages of 14 and 33, you're a boomer. And this is the echo. And they're coming into the workforce, and these kids are different. They think different, they got a whole new culture. Technologies like the air to them. At their fingertips, they have better tools than exist in our most sophisticated companies. They're bright-eyed, they're bushy-tailed. The smart ones, the top third of this generation, are the smartest ever. It's never been tougher to get into the Big schools, kids are graduating from universities like never before. Standard scores are at an all-time high for these kids. They come into the workforce, they're happy to have a job because there's big youth unemployment. So what do? In their culture is the new culture of work. What do? We stick them in a cubicle, try and supervise them and treat them like Dilbert, and then we take away their tools. You know, we ban stuff like Facebook. So this is creating a generational firewall in the workplace. And the fact that you're asking the question is wonderful because we need to close that. So you need to have a whole program to bring these generations together. I have a bunch of things that I do personally. One is called reverse mentoring. I've been doing this since 1997 when the project manager on my website named Michael Furtick did a great job, and he was 13 years old. And they made him the project manager as a 13-year-old because he was the oldest on the team. So I've learned so much from Michael over the years. We have a formal two-way mentoring program. Now it turns out he's learned lots from me too, because I have lots to contribute to him. So that's a first thing that you can do. A second thing, and we could go on, but I won't. The second thing is just personal use. To me, personal use of this technology is sort of a precondition for any kind of comprehension. So you should be on Twitter, forget Hootsuite. You should, check out Instagram, check out Quora, check out, a lot of these new platforms that are really the tools of this new generation. And that's a big way of you basically understanding how these could change your company, but also of being able to relate to the generation better.
I just want to finish with something you wrote in your book. And you say this is not about tinkering at the edges. This is about devising, living, and experiencing a new model of innovation that is fit for the 21st century. It's a big deal.
That was well put.
It's your words. No, but you seem very calm and you're laying this out, but it's
well,
a big deal.
it's a time of great danger, but fundamentally, to me, it's a time of great opportunity. And maybe this new age will be a time where promises are filled, and I will be able to prove Paul Krugman wrong.
That would be fun. Don Tapscott, thank you so much.